Welcome back to Flick Connection. In this episode, I'm going to tell you about all the best stuff Netflix is adding in November 2024, including the Logan Paul-Mike Tyson fight later in the month, and at least 2 brand new limited series I'm super excited for. And then at the end of the video, I'll show you everything leaving Netflix in the month of November, so you can be sure to catch those titles before they're gone. Thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. I'll tell you about their services in a minute, but first, let's talk about those movies they're adding on the first. Movies like Oblivion with Tom Cruise, which is an excellent sci-fi mystery movie. I mean, there is a fair amount of action in the movie, but you wouldn't quite label this an action movie. And that's because the story and the mystery you get with Oblivion is just more interesting than the action. The Infiltrator is another fantastic flick they're adding on the first. This stars Bryan Cranston as a man who literally infiltrated Pablo Escobar's financial scheme. Essentially, it was one of the major roles that brought him down. You get just a fantastic 1980s crime movie, lots of tension with this one, and a pretty good cast to support Cranston. Superbad comes back. I don't know what the deal is with this movie. It's on Netflix for 6 months and then it's off. It's been that way for years.
Why don't we say that every day? Why can't we say it more often?
I just want to go to the rooftops and scream, I love my best friend Evan.
Boop. If Superbad is just too crude for you, they are adding one of the more wholesome teen party movies ever made, 16 Candles.
What's happening, hot stuff?
His name is Long Duck Dong.
Nothing could shock me anymore.
Can I borrow your underpants for 10 minutes?
For some high drama stuff, they're adding Free State of Jones, starring Matthew McConaughey, and Whiplash, a movie I have loved since it came out. I just think it's highly rewatchable. I think the story is actually incredible, and the final sequence is just kind of one of the more amazing finishes to a movie I've ever seen, no matter how many times I've seen it. For some laughs, you've got Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston in Just Go With It. Oh, and Brooklyn Decker. And Goosebumps. I know it's a little late for Halloween, but this is a fun, sort of scary movie that you can watch with the kids. And then a new season of One Piece gets added. Not the live action show, they are bringing that back, but there's a new season of the anime. It's also worth mentioning that they're adding The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser, a movie I just really could not get into. If you haven't seen it, it's a whole lot of this.
I need to know that I have done one thing right with my life.
A whole lot of it. And then another movie about a disgusting human being is Fall into Winter. This actually stars Lori Loughlin. I didn't know they were letting her do things anymore. So I guess it's for people who don't really care about rich people cheating to get their kids into college. It bothers me.
You're very by the book, aren't you?
And then for people who have not had HBO Max this whole time, they're adding 2 measly seasons of Dirty Jobs, but Dirty Jobs is still just excellent television. My 6-year-old daughter loves the show, but the entire series has been on Max for well over a year. Then on the 6th, they're adding an interesting movie titled Pedro Paramo. This actually stars the same guy from the Lincoln Lawyer series that's on Netflix, and it's about a guy that claims to be like from the Village of the Dead. It's not one of my top picks for the month, but it definitely looks interesting. Then on the 7th, we start with Countdown to Paul vs. Tyson. This is going to be behind the scenes look at the fight, at least some of the stuff leading up to it. So if you're psyched for the fight, I imagine the behind the scenes stuff is going to be not just necessary to watch, but I think it'll make the fight more interesting when it does happen. On the same day, Outer Banks returns for part 2 of season 4. On the 8th, they're adding Investigation Alien. I know there are a lot of alien shows out there, or at least shows about UFOs and things like that. Most of them are pretty just not very valuable at all, but this one's promising. George Knapp is involved with this one, and he's been kind of at this game for a long time, has a lot of information. So there is a chance this could be significantly more interesting than your typical UFO show. Now obviously if you're watching this, you use YouTube and probably Netflix, which means you're tech savvy enough to benefit from today's sponsor, Delete Me. Now if you ever wondered how people get your phone number and your email, it's because data brokers actually sell your personal information online to businesses, and honestly, anyone can actually buy this information, and Delete Me is how I've chosen to protect myself and help stay anonymous online. Delete Me is super simple to set up. It took me about 5 minutes to fill out all of my information, the information that I want removed from data brokers, and then I give Delete Me permission to go after those data brokers and ask that data be removed. And that's how this works. Even though people are allowed to buy and sell your data, you are allowed to ask them to remove it, but it would take forever. It would be an impossible task for you to try to take that on your own. Delete Me does all of the work for you, and they update you with regular reporting. And these data brokers are just trying to make money off your information. They do not care who they sell it to, and having your information available on this open market opens you up to a lot of problems. You expose yourself to identity theft, stalking, harassment. Could all happen just because all of your information is essentially readily available for very little money. And for a limited time, my viewers can get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when they go to joindeleteme.com/flick and use my code FLICK. You can also just use this QR code. It's a great way to protect yourself. It's fairly passive. You don't have to do much in order to know that you're protected. And Delete Me also offers family plans, so you could extend this protection to your entire family. Again, just go to joindeleteme.com/flick to get that 20% discount. It's a great deal on a product I use and recommend, but speaking of my recommendations, let's get back to the Netflix list.
Loretta Sage, getting you out of here.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman.
On the 9th, they're adding The Lost City, which has been hanging out on Prime for a while. This actually came out in theaters kind of at the tail end of the pandemic, as I recall, but it's actually a really funny movie. It's essentially a remake of Romancing the Stone, more or less. It's sillier, it's a little more over the top, but in a really fun way. Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock are both really good in this, but Brad Pitt has a surprisingly funny appearance, and then Daniel Radcliffe is actually the bad guy, and he's really maniacal and fun. Again, just a fun movie that you don't have to take seriously at all. You know, just a light, fun time, something most of us should benefit from, you know, on the 9th at the end of that week. But probably like the most anticipated thing coming to the platform this month is the return of Arcane for season 2. They're actually breaking this up into 3 acts, releasing on the 9th, the 16th, and the 23rd. This is an adult animated series based on a series of video games that I actually played quite a bit. The animation style is beautiful, the music is actually really awesome for this show. I mean, for gamers and the like, it's one of the cooler things Netflix has put on in recent years. On the 10th, they're adding an interesting Will Smith movie that came out years back titled Focus. In this movie, he and Margot Robbie are con artists, and the movie itself is actually pretty slick. Because they're con artists, there's tons of twists and turns, and it's not a heist movie, but it's got the flavor of one, so if you like that kind of stuff, I do recommend this movie. Even though I'm much choosier about the Will Smith movies I watch nowadays, this one stood out to me as a pretty decent one. On the 12th, they're adding the first 6 Fast and the Furious movies. And say what you will about these movies, there are some gems in the bunch. Particularly the 5th and 6th installments. That's where they start going a bit more over the top and turn these into more of an action movie rather than just a street racing movie. Yeah, they become sillier, but they're better as a result. They don't take themselves seriously at all at that point in the franchise. And I do think the 5th and 6th movies are the reason we still have them coming out today. They really did revitalize it and basically reinvented it, the franchise. On the 13th, they've got a real weird one coming out that Netflix is touting as an Oscar contender. It's going to be for musical fans. It's a new musical about a trans drug cartel. This actually stars Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez, and it looks kind of like a sexy one. I actually really like this director's work. He's never done a musical before, but his style is very visually stunning. All that said, this does not look like one for me, but in terms of like musicals on Netflix, this one looks exceptional and interesting. On the same day though, they're adding a new Elvis Presley documentary titled Return of the King, and this is actually about his comeback. Now, I was not alive when any of this happened, but Elvis' story actually has quite a few ups and downs, and this is supposedly about his last down and then up late in his career. But then on the 15th, they're finally gonna have the Logan Paul-Mike Tyson fight. Temper your expectations for this one. This could either be something really excellent for Netflix, a nice live sporting event everyone wants to see. It could also be kind of upsetting and brutal. Mike Tyson is way up there in age, and even though he can still throw punches, and even though Logan Paul is a YouTuber, The guy can throw some punches, and it could be, I don't know, I'm a little bit concerned about it, to be honest, but it's also potentially something really good for Netflix and even the sport of boxing at large. Hopefully it's a real sporting event and not just some silly gimmick. We will have to wait and see though. On the same day though, Cobra Kai returns for season 6, part 2. They're finally putting a bow on this thing. It's had a good run. Now we have not even gotten to the 2 limited series I mentioned that I'm super excited for, but next up we've got a comedy special I could not be more excited for. Adam Ray is doing Dr. Phil Unplugged on Netflix. If you don't know, comedian Adam Ray has been doing an impression of Dr. Phil for, I don't know, maybe a year now, and he's been getting around with it. It's very funny, it sounds like Dr. Phil, and apparently not only does Dr. Phil endorse it and think it's funny, he might be part of this comedy special. If he is, it's gonna be one of the funniest things to ever hit Netflix. I cannot wait for it.
I once drove to a 7-Eleven, forgot I drove, and walked home.
On the 20th, they're adding an interesting documentary titled Buy Now, and is actually all about marketing and how subliminal messages convince you to make purchases, something that everyone should be aware of. This is a force that's constantly acting on you, and most people feel like they're impervious to it, and I honestly think the more you know about how it works, the less susceptible you will be to marketing scams and schemes. I'm not vetting that documentary or how good it is on the subject. I've not seen it yet, but still, an important topic I think a lot of people overlook. GT Max is a new heist flick that actually revolves around a motocross racer that gets recruited to pull off heist. Story-wise and production-wise, it actually looks a little bit basic, but it does appear to feature several chase sequences on motorcycles and dirt bikes, but there is a much more realistic and intense looking heist project coming out just a couple of days later on November 22nd. It's titled Helicopter Heist, and this is one of the limited series I'm super hyped for. This actually comes from Sweden. It does look like they've got a pretty good dubbed version based on the trailer if you don't like reading subtitles, but this is based on a real heist, one of the biggest in history, and the trailer not only looks good, but it looks like it takes a very raw, realistic viewpoint of a big scale heist like this. But it looks like it's going to be a real nail-biter. I don't know how many episodes there are going to be, but I love heist movies, and just based on what I've seen, this looks like one of my top recommendations for the month. And then another really interesting looking project is titled The Piano Lesson, also getting added on the 22nd. It's based on a play by August Wilson, who also created Fences, and it actually stars John David Washington and Samuel L. Jackson, with kind of an unusual production. Again, based on the trailer, it looks like kind of a mix between a play and a feature film. And as I always say in these videos, every month there seems to be one top quality animated movie for the family. This month it's titled Spellbound. This actually comes from the Skydance animation studio, which is now head up by John Lasseter, who used to run things at Pixar, so the quality should be pretty good here at the very least. Then on the 25th, they're bizarrely adding a new JonBenet Ramsey documentary. It's probably going to have new information in it, but my goodness, at this point, I don't know how many there are in existence, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's too many. Too many documentaries about JonBenet Ramsey. And if you thought that mild joke about JonBenet Ramsey was in poor taste, do not watch the new Anthony Jeselnik comedy special, Bones and All. His humor is beyond dark. If you cannot get into that, just stay far away from it. I personally love him. I've seen him live once. It was really fun to watch a room full of people squirm, but you probably won't get that coming across in the comedy special still. His humor, they're very short jokes, and they're all absolutely horrific. Speaking of horrific, Lindsay Lohan has another Christmas movie coming to Netflix if you couldn't get enough of the other ones she puts out every single year. Me and my family will definitely be watching Is It Cake Holiday. This is essentially just going to be an Is It Cake season where it's all holiday themed stuff. I don't know why, but we can't get enough of this show. And then the last thing they're adding on the 29th is the limited series I'm super excited for. It's titled Senna. Now this is a drama series based on the life of Ayrton Senna, who's probably the most legendary Formula One racer of all time. I've recommended it before. but there is a documentary by the same name on Netflix, and it is an amazing look at his racing career. You do not have to be into Formula One or any type of racing in order to thoroughly enjoy that documentary. It is honestly one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. It tells the stories of these races with so much drama. I cannot wait to see them bring it to life with filmmaking. The show looks like it's got a top-notch production value, and again, all of the drama that went on the track and off the track in his life made for just a top-notch documentary. I have to assume that the series is going to be just as compelling, but here is everything leaving Netflix in the month of November. If you're new to the channel, welcome, but the date I'm listing is the date it's gone, so make sure you watch it prior to the date listed. That is not the last day it's available. I've put some titles in bold. These are titles I've recommended pretty strongly on recent videos. But do not forget to go to joindeleteme.com/flick to get 20% off and start protecting yourself. It's a great idea, especially in today's world, but I will keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Netflix episode, and you will see me on the next one.